She was poor, innocent, and desperate to save her dying mother, until a mysterious billionaire offered a deal that would change everything. Forced into a marriage she never wanted, she expected cruelty, but what he did on their wedding night left her breathless. Stay tuned because you are about to watch a beautiful story and find out what happened next. Hello, family. Welcome to Tales Haven. Kindly subscribe to my YouTube channel for more beautiful stories. Thank you as you do so. Sit back, relax as we dive into the story. The sound of heavy rain echoed through the leaking roof of a small wooden house on the edge of Maple Creek Village. Inside, Clara Evans sat beside her mother's bed, pressing a damp cloth to her forehead. The smell of medicine mixed with the smoke from a small kerosene lamp that barely lit the room. Her mother, Mrs. Evans, coughed weakly. Her face was pale, her breathing shallow. Clara's eyes filled with tears as she whispered, "Mama, please hold on. I'll find the money, I promise." Her mother tried to smile, but her lips trembled. "You've done enough, my child," she said softly. "You've always been my light. Don't worry about me." But Clara couldn't stop worrying. For months, she had been working at the village bakery, earning barely enough for food. Now the doctor had said her mother needed urgent treatment in the city hospital, and it would cost more money than she could ever imagine. Her father, Mr. Evans, sat in the corner of the room, his face hidden in his hands. Once a hard-working mechanic, he had lost his shop after borrowing money from dangerous people. That mistake had destroyed the family's peace. Suddenly, there was a loud knock on the door, a knock that made everyone jump. Bang! 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 Clara hurried to open it, her heart racing. Outside stood two men in black coats, holding umbrellas. One of them, a tall man with sharp eyes, spoke first. "Good evening. I'm Mr. Grayson, legal representative of Mr. Alexander Knight." The name sounded powerful and dangerous. Clara had heard rumors about Alexander Knight, a billionaire known for his coldness and power in the city. Mr. Grayson stepped inside, without asking permission. He looked around, his eyes coldly scanning the small room as if measuring its worth. "I believe you owe our client a large sum of money," he said, looking at Mr. Evans. Her father nodded slowly, shame covering his face. "Yes, but please. I just need more time. My wife is sick. I'll pay him back somehow." Mr. Grayson's expression didn't change. He opened a leather briefcase and placed a contract on the wooden table. "Mr. Knight has made an offer. He's willing to clear your entire debt. But in return, your daughter must marry him." The room fell silent. Even the sound of rain seemed to pause. Clara froze where she stood. "Marry? What do you mean?" she asked in disbelief. Mr. Grayson replied in a calm, almost mechanical tone. "Mr. Knight is a businessman. He needs a wife for personal reasons. He prefers someone young, obedient, and untouched. The marriage will be legal and respectful. You will live comfortably. All your family's debt will disappear immediately." Clara felt her chest tighten. "You mean I would have to marry a stranger? For money?" The man didn't answer. He simply pushed the papers closer to her father. Mrs. Evans, still weak on the bed, whispered, "No, Clara. You can't." But her voice broke mid-sentence. Clara rushed to her side, crying, "Mama, please don't talk. You need rest." Her father's voice cracked as he said, "Clara, I never wanted this. But we're out of options. The doctor won't treat your mother without payment. If you don't agree, she might not survive the week." Tears streamed down Clara's cheeks. Her hands trembled. She looked from her father to her mother, both broken, helpless, and tired. "Why me?" she whispered. "Why does it have to be me?" Mr. Grayson cleared his throat and said coldly, "Because Mr. Knight chose you. He saw your picture when your father came to his office last month begging for help. He said you looked pure." Clara's heart shattered. It felt like her dignity was being sold. But she also knew her mother's life depended on her decision. Slowly, she stood up, wiping her tears. "If I say yes," she asked quietly, "will my parents be safe?" "Completely," Mr. Grayson said. "Mr. Knight always keeps his word." The silence that followed was heavy. The rain outside grew louder, almost as if the sky itself was crying for her. With trembling hands, Clara reached for the pen lying beside the contract. Her tears fell onto the paper as she whispered, "For Mama, I'll do it." Her father buried his face in his palms, sobbing quietly. Her mother tried to speak, but no words came. Clara signed her name, each letter feeling like a piece of her soul being taken away. Mr. Grayson closed the briefcase, gave a cold nod, and said, "A car will arrive at dawn to take her to the city. The wedding will be tomorrow." And just like that, he left, leaving behind a broken silence. Clara sank to the floor beside her mother's bed, clutching her hand tightly. "Mama," she whispered through tears, "I'm scared." Her mother stroked her hair weakly. "My child, whatever happens, never forget who you are. You were born pure, and no money can buy your soul." That night, Clara didn't sleep. She sat by the window, watching the rain fall endlessly, wondering what kind of man she was about to marry, and what kind of life awaited her in the world of billionaires and secrets. As dawn approached, she packed her small bag with trembling fingers, an old Bible, her mother's scarf, and the last photo they took together. When the black car arrived, Clara took one last look at her home. The roof leaked, the walls cracked, but it was still the place filled with memories and love. With tears streaming down her face, she whispered,
"Goodbye, Mama.
I'll come back for you." Then, with one deep breath, she stepped into the car, not knowing that the road ahead would test her heart in ways she could never imagine. The black car drove through the misty morning roads, leaving the little village behind. Clara sat quietly in the back seat, her small bag on her lap, her hands tightly gripping the edge of her scarf, her mother's scarf, as if it were her last connection to home. The driver didn't speak. The rain had stopped, but the sky remained gray, as if mourning her fate. Every mile that passed made her heart feel heavier. She looked out the window, at the trees, the fields, the houses fading one by one, and whispered a silent prayer. "God, please don't let this be the end of me." After several hours, the car entered a large city she had never seen before. Tall glass buildings, wide, clean roads, and expensive cars filled her view. People walked in neat suits and shining shoes, a world too bright for someone from a poor village. The car stopped in front of a luxurious hotel. Two women in elegant uniforms came to open the door for her. "Good morning, Mrs. Evans," one said politely. "We've been expecting you." Clara blinked in confusion. Mrs. Evans? That name didn't feel like hers anymore. But she stayed silent and followed them inside. They led her to a suite filled with white roses, mirrors, and a wedding gown hanging beside the bed. The gown sparkled under the light, but to her, it looked like a cage made of diamonds. One of the women handed her a note. "From Mr. Knight," she said. Clara unfolded the note with shaking hands. It read, "Be ready by noon. The ceremony will be private."
AK.
Just 2 lines. No warmth. No welcome. Only orders. As she read, her chest tightened. She had imagined her wedding day since childhood, filled with laughter, music, and love. But today, her dream had turned into a contract, and her groom was a stranger. By noon, Clara stood before the mirror in her white gown. The makeup artist had done her best, but even beauty couldn't hide the sadness in her eyes. When she looked at her reflection, she barely recognized herself. The dress fit perfectly, the veil shimmered softly, but inside, she was trembling. The door opened. Mr. Grayson, the same lawyer from last night, entered the room. "It's time," he said. She followed him through a long golden hallway that led to a private garden filled with white flowers. At the end of the aisle stood Alexander Knight, the man she was about to marry. He was tall, broad-shouldered, and sharply dressed in a black suit. His expression was unreadable, his eyes cold but intelligent. He didn't smile. He didn't move. He just stood there like a statue made of ice. Clara's heart pounded as she walked toward him. She could feel everyone's eyes, the few guests whispering among themselves. Who is she? She looks so poor. Where did he find her? Her cheeks burned with shame, but she kept walking. When she finally stood beside him, she couldn't bring herself to look into his eyes. The priest began the ceremony. His voice sounded distant, almost like an echo. "Do you, Alexander Knight, take this woman to be your lawfully wedded wife?" "I do," Alexander replied firmly, his tone strong but empty. "Do you, Clara Evans, take this man to be your lawfully wedded husband?"
Her throat felt dry.
The words barely came out. I do." The priest smiled faintly and said, "You may now exchange the rings." A servant stepped forward with a small silver tray. Alexander took a diamond ring and slipped it onto her finger. His touch was gentle but cold. When Clara's turn came, her hands trembled so much that she almost dropped the ring. He noticed. Without saying a word, he held her hand steady, guiding her fingers to his. For a brief second, their eyes met, hers full of fear, his full of something she couldn't understand. When the ceremony ended, there was no cheering, no applause, no kiss. Only silence. Mr. Grayson clapped softly and said, "Congratulations, Mr. and Mrs. Knight." Clara forced a small nod, but tears stung her eyes. That evening, she was taken to Alexander's mansion, a place so big and silent that her footsteps echoed against the marble floors. The chandeliers above her looked like frozen stars. Servants bowed as they passed, but none smiled. Alexander walked ahead, his stride confident, his presence commanding. He stopped near the staircase and turned slightly. "Your room is upstairs," he said in a calm voice. "Dinner will be served at 8. You don't need to join me if you're tired." Clara hesitated. "Thank you, sir," she said softly. He looked at her for a brief moment, the way one looks at a fragile thing, then nodded and walked away. Inside her room, Clara sat on the edge of the bed. The walls were painted ivory, the furniture gold-trimmed, and the air smelled of expensive perfume. But to her, it all felt cold and lonely. She removed her veil and touched her ring, whispering to herself, "Mama, I did it. But why does it hurt so much?" Hours passed. It was almost midnight when a gentle knock came at her door. She stood quickly, her heart racing. Alexander stepped inside, still in his black suit. His face looked tired. "You should rest," he said quietly. "Tomorrow will be a long day." She nodded nervously, unsure what to say. He looked around the room, then at her. "Clara," he said, his voice softer now, "you don't owe me anything tonight." Her eyes widened in surprise. "I know this marriage was not your choice," he continued. "So sleep peacefully. You're safe here." She stared at him, speechless. She had expected cruelty, not kindness. For a moment his eyes softened, just a little, before he turned to leave. At the door he paused and said, "Good night, Mrs. Knight." Then he walked away, leaving her standing in silence, her heart pounding for reasons she didn't understand. As she lay down, tears rolled quietly down her cheeks. She didn't know if she should be afraid of him or grateful. That night, for the first time since she left home, Clara whispered a small prayer not just for her mother, but for the man she had married. And somewhere deep inside, a fragile hope began to grow. Clara woke before sunrise, the room still soft with blue light. For a moment she forgot where she was. Then the chandelier above her and the heavy ring on her finger reminded her, this was not home, this was Mr. Knight's mansion. She washed her face, tied her hair with her mother's scarf, and opened the curtains. The garden below stretched like a painting, tall cypress trees, neat hedges, and a quiet fountain that whispered as water fell into stone. Somewhere, a bird sang. The sound steadied her breathing. A soft knock came at the door. A woman in a neat black dress entered with a tray.
"Good morning, madam."
"I'm Marta, the housekeeper. Breakfast?" "Yes, please." "Thank you," Clara replied shyly. Marta placed tea, bread, and fruit on a small table. She glanced at Clara's scarf and smiled. "It suits you. If you need anything, extra blankets, a different pillow, just tell me. This house is large, but people get lonely here." Clara's heart squeezed. "How long have you worked for Mr. Knight?" 11 years, Marta said, lowering her voice. "He's strict about work, but he's fair. He used to laugh more." She stopped herself, as if she had said too much. I'll be nearby if you need me. When Marta left, Clara ate slowly, thinking about the night before, his words. You don't owe me anything tonight. They were simple words, yet they felt like unexpected shelter. She decided to explore. The corridors were lined with framed paintings and quiet lamps. She passed a library with tall shelves and a study with a large mahogany desk. Every room smelled like polished wood and a faint hint of cologne. In the study, the morning light fell across the desk, revealing a silver picture frame turned face down. She paused. Something about the way it lay, hidden but not removed, pulled at her. She looked around, then gently lifted it. A photograph. Alexander stood on a sunny beach, wearing a white shirt, smiling with a happiness she had not seen on him. Beside him was a woman with soft brown hair, holding a little boy with bright eyes and a sand bucket. The woman's arm was hooked through Alexander's. The boy's hands were dusty with sand. They looked like a family made of light. Clara returned the frame exactly as she found it, her fingers trembling. Suddenly, footsteps sounded in the hall. She stepped back from the desk just as Alexander appeared at the doorway, jacket in hand, tie undone. He stopped when he saw her. Their eyes met. For a breath, neither spoke. I'm sorry, Clara said quickly. I shouldn't be here. I was just... It's all right, he said, his voice low. He glanced at the frame, then back to her. You're free to use the library and the garden. The study too, if you like. She nodded, unsure if she had made him sad. He moved to the desk, picked up a file, and seemed ready to leave, but hesitated. Breakfast was brought to your room? He asked.
Yes.
Thank you. Good. He looked as if he wanted to say something else, then held it back. I'll be at the office until late. If you need anything, Marta or Louis, the butler, will help. Mr. Knight, she said before he could go. Would it be all right if I call my mother later, to check on her? He studied her face, and the frost in his eyes softened a shade. I've already arranged for her to be admitted to St. Helena's Hospital. Treatment begins today. He paused. I'll have Louis set up a call. Clara's throat tightened. Gratitude rushed through her like warmth. Thank you, she whispered. He gave a short nod and left, the echo of his steps fading down the corridor. At noon, Louis helped her call the hospital. When Clara heard her mother's voice, weak but hopeful, she pressed the receiver to her cheek. Mama, are you comfortable? Are the nurses kind? They are, Mrs. Evans said, voice soft with relief. And they say the bills are covered. My child, are you safe? Yes, Clara said, tears slipping free. I'm safe. After the call, she stood at the window and cried quietly. She was still afraid of the future, but a weight she had carried for months had lifted from her chest. Later, she wandered into the kitchen to thank the staff. The cooks paused, unsure how to address her. Highborn guests rarely visited them. Clara smiled and introduced herself to Femi, the head chef, and Rosa, a young assistant with dimpled cheeks. May I help? Clara asked. Rosa laughed softly. Madam, you don't need to. I know, but I'd like to. Where I come from, the kitchen is where people breathe. Femi exchanged a look with Rosa, then slid a wooden board toward Clara. Chop these herbs, careful with your fingers. Clara rolled up her sleeves. The sharp, fresh smell of basil and thyme rose into the air. Within minutes, the ice around the staff melted. They talked about silly things, burnt sauces, a cat that kept sneaking into the garden, a delivery man who sang loudly when he thought no one was listening. For the first time in days, Clara laughed. Marta watched from the door, smiling to herself. Maybe this house will breathe again, she murmured. Evening came with a soft pink sky. Clara returned to her room and changed into a simple blue dress. She tied her hair back and placed her mother's scarf gently in a drawer, afraid to wear it in case she stained it. She walked to the garden, following the sound of the fountain's gentle rhythm. That was where she found Alexander, alone on a stone bench, sleeves rolled to his elbows, tie loose, the day's weight sitting on his shoulders. In the pink light, he looked less like a statue and more like a man who had forgotten how to rest. She almost turned away, but he looked up and saw her. "Do you come here often?" she asked, voice careful. "Not really," he said, "but sometimes the noise in my head needs water." A faint, tired smile touched his mouth. "Did you speak with your mother?"
Yes.
"She's in good hands." She sat at the far end of the bench, leaving a respectful space. "Thank you for arranging everything." He nodded. For a moment they listened to the fountain. "Mr. Knight," she began, then stopped. "I mean Alexander." The name felt too intimate, but Mr. Knight felt like a wall. He didn't correct her. Clara gathered courage. "This morning I was in your study. I saw the picture. I'm sorry if I overstepped." He stared at the water, jaw tightening. When he spoke, his voice seemed to come from a deep room inside him. Her name was Elise. Our son was Matthew. The car that hit them didn't stop. He rubbed his thumb against his palm, as if smoothing a rough edge. The police called it an accident. I call it a hole that never closes. Clara's eyes stung. "I'm so sorry," she said, the words small but honest. "For a long time," he continued, "I thought if I filled my life with work, the silence would stop screaming. It doesn't. I built companies. I won battles. I lost the only war that mattered." He looked at her then, and for the first time his gaze was unguarded. "I didn't marry you to hurt you, Clara. I married you because a board member wanted leverage over me and threatened your father. I also needed a wife to settle a legal matter with a partner overseas. It was cold. It was fast. But I hoped, I could at least keep you safe." Clara felt her breath catch. Pieces of the puzzle shifted into place. The contract, the speed, his restraint, the way the staff spoke about the house going quiet. "Thank you for telling me," she said. "No one explained anything to me. I only saw a door close on my life and another open to a place where I couldn't breathe." He watched her hands as she clasped them together. "Can you breathe now?" She lifted her face to the cool evening air and listened to the water. "A little." A tiny smile ghosted across his lips. "That's progress." They sat in soft silence. The garden lights flicked on, tiny stars along the path. "Would you like to eat in the dining room?" he asked. "Or here?" "Here," she said quickly, then blushed. "If it's allowed." "It's your house too," he said, surprising them both. He stood and called for Louis. Within minutes a small table appeared, tablecloth, 2 plates, warm bread, and a simple soup that smelled of the herbs Clara had chopped earlier. When she lifted the spoon, she laughed softly. "What?" he asked. "I helped in the kitchen," she admitted. "Only a little." He tasted the soup and looked mildly shocked. "It's good. Better than our usual Monday." "Don't tell Femi," she whispered, and Alexander laughed. An actual laugh, brief and rough, as if unused. The sound startled them both. They ate slowly, talking in short pieces. She told him about the village bakery and the way the ovens whooshed to life at dawn. He told her about a lighthouse he used to visit as a child. Neither spoke about the wedding or the contract, but the space between them felt less sharp. When the plates were cleared, he stood. "Thank you for the company, Clara." "Thank you for the garden," she replied, unsure why those words mattered. He walked her to the staircase inside. At her door, he paused. "If you can't sleep," he said gently, "there's a music box in the library, top shelf, left side. Turn the key 3 times. It plays a lullaby my mother loved. It helps." She smiled, small, real. "Good night, Alexander." "Good night." After he left, Clara went to the library and found the music box exactly where he said. It was silver, with tiny stars carved into the lid. She turned the key 3 times. A clear, tender tune filled the room, floating up to the high ceiling like a prayer that remembered every bruise but still chose to sing. She pressed a hand to her heart and closed her eyes. For the first time since stepping into the black car, Clara felt something she could name. Not safety, not certainty, hope. She didn't know it yet, but the simple dinner in the garden had moved a stone inside both of them. And by the next evening, one more stone would move, one that would change the shape of their lives forever. The next morning arrived with soft sunlight spilling through the curtains. Clara woke to the gentle sound of birds singing near her window. She stretched slowly, her body still tired, but her heart strangely light. The memory of last night, the laughter, the dinner, the music box, stayed warm in her mind. For the first time since her wedding, she didn't feel like a stranger in the mansion. She felt like maybe she belonged somewhere, even if it was just in a small part of Alexander's silent world. After breakfast, she went to the garden again. The same fountain whispered softly, and the same breeze played with her hair. Marta joined her, smiling. "You've brought color back into this house, madam," she said. Clara blushed slightly. "I haven't done much." "Oh, but you have," Marta replied kindly. "Mr. Knight has smiled twice this week. Before you came, he hadn't smiled in 2 years." Those words stayed in Clara's heart all day. She didn't fully understand what was happening between them, but she knew she wanted to see him happy again. That evening, Clara decided to surprise him. She went into the kitchen with Rosa and Femi, insisting on helping. Together they prepared a simple dinner: roasted chicken, mashed potatoes, and a small chocolate cake. She wore a soft blue dress and left her hair down, its waves falling gently over her shoulders. She wasn't sure why she cared how she looked, but something inside her wanted Alexander to see her, not just the girl who signed a contract. At 7:30, she asked the butler to set the dinner table in the smaller dining room near the garden, the same place they had laughed 2 nights before. Candles flickered gently, casting a golden glow across the plates. Everything looked warm, gentle, and calm. When Alexander arrived home, he looked exhausted. His tie hung loose, his eyes heavy from work. But when he walked into the small dining room, he stopped. The smell of food, the quiet light, and Clara's shy smile froze him where he stood. "You did all this?" he asked quietly. "Yes," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "To say thank you. For helping my mother. For being kind." For a moment, Alexander said nothing. He just stared at her, as if he couldn't believe someone had done something so gentle for him. Then, slowly, he smiled, the same smile she had seen in the photo of him on the beach. "You shouldn't have gone to this trouble," he said softly. "It's not trouble," she replied. "It's dinner." They both laughed quietly, easing the air between them. Dinner passed with soft conversation. Clara told him stories from her village, how she used to bake bread at dawn, and how her best friend once sold flowers by the roadside. Alexander listened, really listened, his expression softening more with each story. Then he spoke, his tone quieter than before. "Clara, I owe you an apology. You didn't deserve to be dragged into this mess." "You've already done more than enough," she said quickly. "You saved my family." "No," he said, shaking his head. "I saved them, yes, but I also took away your peace. I took away your freedom. That wasn't right." Her eyes softened. "You didn't take it away, Alexander. You gave me a chance to fight for something bigger than myself. You gave my mother a second chance." He leaned back in his chair, watching her. "You always find light, don't you?" Clara smiled. "Someone has to." After dinner, they stepped into the garden again. The moon hung high, silver and round. The fountain's water glowed faintly under the soft lights. Alexander stopped by the bench where they had talked before. "I used to come here every night after they died," he said. "I would sit in silence and ask God why. Why them and not me?" Clara looked at him with quiet pain. "And did he ever answer?" He gave a sad smile. "Not in words. But maybe he sent you." Her breath caught. For a moment, neither moved. The air between them felt alive, fragile and full of meaning. Then Alexander took a small step closer. His eyes were calm, but filled with emotion he could no longer hide. "Clara," he said softly, "I didn't marry you for love.
But now,
I don't know what's happening to me. I can't stop thinking about you." Tears welled up in her eyes. She whispered, "I thought you'd never say that." He reached out slowly, giving her time to pull away if she wished. She didn't. When his hand finally touched her cheek, she closed her eyes, letting a single tear fall. "You deserve to be loved," he said quietly, not sold. And I want to be the man who loves you." Clara couldn't speak. Her heart felt too full. She had been sold as if she were property, yet here was the same man, the one she feared, now treating her like something precious. He brushed the tear from her cheek with his thumb and whispered, "From now on, no more contracts. Just us." Her voice trembled. "And what about the people who said I don't belong in your world?" He smiled gently. "Then I'll build a new world for us both." They stood under the moonlight, neither needing to say another word. He pulled her close, holding her carefully, as if afraid she might disappear. She rested her head on his chest, feeling the steady beat of his heart, strong, real, and human. For the first time, Clara felt completely safe. Later that night, as she lay in bed, she heard footsteps stop outside her door. A soft knock followed. "Clara," Alexander's voice came, calm and low. "Are you awake?" "Yes," she whispered. He stepped inside, holding a small box. "I was going to give this to you after dinner," he said, placing it in her hands. She opened it slowly. Inside was a delicate gold chain with a small cross pendant. "It belonged to Elise," he said. "She wore it every day. I've kept it all this time, but I think she would want you to have it." Clara looked up, tears glimmering. "Alexander, I can't." "Please," he interrupted softly. "It's time I stop living in the past." She nodded and clasped the necklace around her neck. The pendant rested above her heart, warm against her skin. "Thank you," she said quietly. "I'll treasure it." He smiled faintly. "Good night, Clara." "Good night," she replied, her heart full. That night, neither of them slept easily, not out of sadness, but because something beautiful and terrifying had begun. For Alexander, it was the first night he dreamed of life again. For Clara, it was the night she realized love could bloom even from the darkest soil. And though the world had once sold her, fate had bought her something priceless in return, a love she never expected but would carry forever. 1 year later, the mansion that was once silent now echoed with laughter, music, and life. The same halls where Clara once walked with fear now carried the scent of fresh flowers, baked bread, and joy. Clara stood by the window of his study, arranging a vase of lilies beside the silver picture frame that once faced down. Now it stood upright for everyone to see. Inside the frame was a new photo, Alexander and Clara smiling under the same garden where they had fallen in love. Beside it was another, Mrs. Evans, healthy and glowing, holding Clara's hand during her last visit. Everything had changed, but the memories of pain had not been wasted. They had been turned into strength. Clara's mother had recovered fully after months of treatment. She now lived in a small, warm house near the ocean, one that Alexander secretly bought for her as a gift. Every Sunday, Clara and Alexander visited her. They would sit together, share stories, and sometimes laugh about how destiny had written their lives in such unexpected ink. Mrs. Evans often said, "When you sold yourself for love, you didn't lose. You found a heart worth more than gold." Those words stayed with Clara always. In the city, Alexander had changed too. His employees noticed it first, the way he greeted them with a real smile, the way his eyes carried peace instead of pressure. The man who once hid behind walls of business had learned to open his heart again. Every morning, he would find Clara waiting in the garden with tea, and every evening, they would sit under the stars listening to the gentle sound of the fountain. It became their quiet ritual, a reminder of where their story began. Sometimes, Alexander would take her hand and whisper, "You came into my life as a contract, but you became my destiny." Clara would laugh softly and reply, "And you bought me with kindness, not money." Months later, they opened a small foundation in memory of Elise and Matthew, one that helped poor families pay for hospital bills. Clara insisted on naming it the Hope Home. Every time she signed a check to help another mother or child, she felt her heart swell with gratitude. She knew what it meant to be helpless and what it meant to be rescued. One evening, as the sun set behind the hills, Clara and Alexander walked hand in hand along the garden path. The air smelled like roses, and fireflies flickered softly around them. Do you ever regret it? She asked gently. The way everything began? He stopped walking, turned to her, and said, If I could go back, I'd still find you. Maybe I'd just do it sooner, before the pain, before the tears. Because you are the only good thing my broken heart ever found. Her eyes glistened with emotion. She placed her hand on his chest and whispered, And you are the only man who saw value in a poor girl's heart. He smiled, brushing a loose strand of hair from her face. No, Clara. You were never poor. You were priceless from the very beginning. That night, they sat under the stars again, wrapped in quiet peace. The fountain hummed softly nearby. The same music that had once comforted two lonely souls now played for two hearts finally whole. And as the wind carried the scent of lilies through the air, Alexander whispered against her ear, I love you, Clara. Not for what you gave me, but for what you taught me, that even the richest man on earth is poor without love. Clara smiled through her tears, resting her head on his shoulder. Because in the end, she had learned the same truth. Love, not money, was the real treasure. And that was the story of the poor virgin who was sold to a billionaire and ended up owning his heart forever. That brings us to the end of this video. I hope you find the story worth watching. If you do, kindly subscribe to my YouTube channel, like, comment, and share this video to your friends and loved ones. Your support and engagement encourage me to post more videos. Thanks for watching.